All right. Hi everybody. Welcome to our first webinar for our alumni series for Cientifico Latino Inc. My name is Rob Fernandez, and I'm the Executive Director of Cientifico Latino. I am very happy to introduce our three panelists. First up is Ashley Thompson, who is entering her second year as a neuroscience PhD student at the University of Alabama at Birmingham, and she's currently a member of Dr. Farah Lubin's lab. She completed her bachelor's degree in microbiology with a minor in psychology at Mississippi State University, and then went on to complete her bachelor's in medical laboratory science at University of Mississippi Medical Center. She is now studying, investigating the role of epigenetic mechanisms, such as long non-coding RNAs in oligodendrocytes in models of aging in Dr. Lubin's lab. Next up, we have Felix Javier Berrios Ortega. He is entering his second year as a PhD student in ecology and evolutionary biology at the University of Connecticut, where he is a member of Dr. James Burnott's lab. He earned his undergraduate degree in wildlife management from the University of Puerto Rico at Humacao, and is an alumnus of the Doris Duke Conservation Scholars Program at UC Santa Cruz. Prior to grad school, Felix was deeply involved in science communication, DEI initiatives, and mentorship, including founding the SAGNAS UPRH chapter and co-hosting the LGBTQ plus STEMcast podcast. His current research focuses on taxonomy and evolution of parasitic coccopods using morphological matrices, museum specimens, and advancing imaging techniques such as confocal laser scanning microscopy and micro CT. We'll have a lot to talk about. I also use a lot of confocal microscopy. And lastly, we have Sushma Gude. Sushma is a second-year PhD student in the Weldon School of Biomedical Engineering at Purdue University. She earned her Bachelor's of Science in Biomedical Engineering, along with a minor in Spanish and a Global Education Certificate from Virginia Commonwealth University in May 2023. Following her undergraduate studies, she completed the NIH Postbac Research Education Program PrEP at Purdue University, conducting research in a laboratory of Dr. Sherry Harbin. Her current doctoral work, also under Dr. Harbin's mentorship, focuses on developing a single-dose, sustained-release vaccine delivery system, utilizing a college-based polymer for innovative applications in global wildlife management. And as a reminder for those who came in, if you have any questions throughout the session, just feel free to ask it in the Q&A. In terms of how the session is broken up, we will have our panelists discuss a little bit about their experience in the first year of grad school. We have a couple core questions we want to tackle in a panel session, and then after that, we'll pretty much leave it up to a Q&A from the audience. Alrighty, so let's get started. And let's see. We'll pretty much start off with our panelists sharing their experience on their first year of grad school. And feel free to further introduce yourselves in case I missed anything else. And then we'll start off with Ashley.
Hi everyone. I'm Ashley. As Robert said, I'm an upcoming second year at the University of Alabama in Birmingham, studying neuroscience. My first year was good. It was good. I learned a lot, and I finished it. And I learned that one of the biggest things I learned, and that I will share with everyone today, is that my mentor told me is that the goal of this PhD program, any degree program you're in, is to get the degree. And do what you can, take care of yourself, take your time. I've learned that the hard way, to take your time because this is a journey. It's not a race. And just do what you can. So hopefully, we can answer some questions you guys have, talk about rotations, how to find the right mentor, talk about classes, how to balance all of that. And so, yeah, but we'll get into it later for sure.
Great, thank you, Ashley. And then Felix.
Yeah, so I'm Felix. As it was already said, I'm starting my second year now, so first year is done. It was definitely good. It was a learning experience as I expected, but in a lot of other different ways, because it's not only just like starting a new project, new system, whatever. You're like building, if you're moving schools or somewhere new, you're like building a completely new like social network, social circle. And it's not the same as when you start undergrad. Like it's so during undergrad, it's so much easier to find these connections with people from all over campus and all these other majors. But for PhD students and like grad students in general, it's like a little bit harder. You're like so sucked in with your own cohort and like department community, and that's kind of everything you see on your day to day for the most part. So I think that's what I personally struggle with the most when I started grad school was like building that social circle and like rebuilding all those connections because I didn't realize how important that was till I was like in the trenches fighting during classes and like being stressed for everything and not having that support network that I had during undergrad was something that I was like, wow. But other than that, research is going great for me at least. It's been a lot of learning because I've never worked with this system before I started grad school. So it's been a lot of like learning from the literature, but also having a lot of like one-on-one time with my advisor. He's a new PI, so he has more time to like teach us all these things. So I've had that benefit. And also classes. So classes were definitely something that I mean, people say that grad school classes, like, they're like it's just classes, you do what you can or whatever, but that's not what it feels like when you're actually doing them. I'm also a perfectionist when it comes to like classes and grades. So no matter how much, even my advice was just like focus on passing, do what you need to do. I don't have that mentality. I have to do the best I can. So it was a lot of that, but I found it to be a great learning experience. First year was definitely something. I'm glad it's over now. I'm glad that it's now second year. So yeah.
Great. Thank you, Felix. And Sushma?
Hi, I'm Sushma. I'm a second year at Purdue University, like it was mentioned before. My first year was a little different just because I did the post-bac program in the same lab I'm currently in. So I was actually advancing my project a lot more during my first year of class, or I guess PhD with balancing classes as well. I think that was the most difficult part of my first year was, oh, how am I balancing my coursework with my research because during my postbac, I only really had research to focus on with a few minor classes that are more professional development based. So it was just a huge kind of mind-blowing opportunity um, to kind of figure out what my skill sets and time management skills are, plus also managing the expectations of my advisor because she kind of saw me as a second year PhD student rather than a first year. And so it was balancing those expectations with also figuring out, oh, who are my people here at Purdue? Kind of like Felix was mentioning, was what is my place here? How am I going to fit in? And just getting used to the environment at Purdue as well. But yeah.
Great. Thank you, everybody. And then we'll get started with a panel session. And we actually have a couple questions, which is very relevant to some of the questions that I will be asking. So definitely keep the questions going. We do have an entire Q&A. So the more interactive you make it, the more our panelists can provide helpful information. But to start off, in your first year of grad school, how did you go about choosing your research laboratory or your research topic? And let me know whoever wants to start it off.
I mean, I can start off. I we don't do rotations in most of the EEB labs, so I guess my perspective is like different from that. But research topic, my advisor does mostly evolution of parasitic copepods, and that's kind of like the broader theme. And I remember that when I was talking about going to grad school, we talked about project ideas, and we even did like a proposal for the NSF RFP. So I had like a kind of an idea of the overall direction that my project was gonna go, but I didn't know what I was gonna start on until I was here. And I was just chatting with my advisor about what I wanted to work on, knowing that I'm gonna have classes and knowing that I'm gonna be adjusting. So like finding a balance of something that was going to be something that's gonna actually be for my research project and something that's gonna be for the long term, but also something that's easy to do right now at this second, because I couldn't overwork myself with learning all of these other new techniques that I will need for this other project, plus managing my classes. So it's about finding a balance of what I could do and what I will feel comfortable with doing at this moment.
Yeah, I think I could go next. So during my post-bac, I actually had to do 1 week rotations, which was interesting because it's such a short period of time to figure out, oh, like, is this the lab I want to be in at that time for a year? And some of the things I kind of took into consideration was the lab environment. Do I seem like I can fit in with the grad students, with the core people in the lab? Does my PI's mentorship fit what I need in, for example, my postbac? In terms of the research, I had a very kind of specific goal, which I was able to figure out during my postbac and even prior to it, which you don't need to have figured out at all when you first come in or when you're looking into grad schools, kind of having a more specific area you want to go into. For me, it was very specific into delivery systems using biomaterials for sustained delivery. And so that kind of helped me figure out, okay, what is the type of research I want to get into? Specifically, the lab I want to go into. Do the advisors seem open with the idea of starting a new project, if they're not doing something in that sustained release field? And also, I think for me specifically, I really do love collaboration. I think it's very important in order to learn about just your interests and also figuring out how to work with people, getting new ideas. So that was kind of my framework in going through the rotation process. But yeah.
For me, I had an idea of what type of research I wanted to do, a very broad idea. Because for a lot of researchers, so for me, I wanted to focus on neurodegeneration and Alzheimer's specifically. There are a lot of researchers doing Alzheimer's research. And they may not be taking students. So it's important to be open-minded, when finding a rotation. Um, and so actually the project I'm working on right now is age-related dementia, which, is something that I am interested in, not exactly Alzheimer's, but it could transition into that. So if that's, something you're interested in, find a PI, who's taking students and would like allow you to make that transition maybe later on in your research if the data is like lining up. Um, and then so for UAB, they required us to have 3 6-week rotations, which was good, but it just kind of like forced you to have to deal with it, like even if you didn't really enjoy it. But it's good because you figure out what kinds of things you want in a mentor, what kind of lab environment you want. And yes, the project is important because that's what you're going to be doing, the whole time you're there. The lab environment is just as important, if not more, because you're going to have to deal with those people every single day. Um, and you don't want to like dread coming into the lab or like, and you want to be comfortable, you want to be comfortable with your mentor and the people in your lab and like feel comfortable asking questions. No stupid questions. There's no stupid questions. Ask away, and you should feel comfortable literally asking anything like, how do I do PCR? What is PCR? you know and they should be like, well, we'll figure it out together. So take advantage of those rotations for sure. Have an open mind with your project, and things will fall into place. You may not think they're going the way that you want them to go. That's okay. It's okay. Maybe that's just not how it's supposed to go. So yeah, just take it a day at a time and be calm as much as you can, please.
Great. Thank you, everybody. Moving on to the second question. We touched a little bit about it in the intros, but feel free to expand either on a particular aspect. What was your first year of grad school like, and how did you make the most of any first year opportunities? And what are common mistakes to avoid for those who are starting their first year?
I can start again. First year of grad school, I mean, an adjustment. I don't know, like looking back at the beginning of first year, I was so overwhelmed from the start, from orientation, just everything was so overwhelming. All these like future deadlines that they mentioned, but like have really nothing to do with this year at all. Like when they started talking about prelims, prospectus defense, submitting this, making your committee, there was like a lot of information that was thrown at me that first week, and I was so overwhelmed. But I just sat down with my advisor and we kind of just talk about what was important this first year and kind of set goals from the start as to like what I wanted to accomplish that first year, up until the summer. So And like I mentioned at the start, it was classes plus research. I didn't have to TA first year, but I know that's something that a lot of people also have to like take into account when it comes to planning around their first year. So it was a lot of that. And my department had like a seminar that was required for all first year that it was called Preparing for a Career in Ecology and Evolution. And every week was like a different topic with the different faculty. So we got to meet everybody in the department and things like that. And it was pretty late in the day, so like usually it was once a week. We were all tired by that point, but I definitely feel like it was useful. So if your department has something like that, I think that's something that you should definitely take advantage of because we got to not only just meet the faculty, but also like learn about different topics like time management, imposter syndrome, publishing, and so on and so forth. But in common mistakes, I would say try to not like I guess not putting any effort into like building community and like building connections with people because sometimes that's like that feels like a hassle when you're starting on. You have all these other things that it's work, but you have to do. You're like, I don't want to go out to a bar with people from classes again. Like, I don't want to, you know, all those types of vibes and feelings. I think it is important to build that connection with the department and the community because that's kind of the people that are always going to be around you through this. And those are the people that are going to relate to what you're going through in a lot of moments. Like now I'm looking back first year, first semester, I didn't have a lot of people to like tell them what I was feeling about whether that be the stress of classes or like building a committee. That was so stressful. And I didn't have that many people that I felt comfortable asking like honest questions about the faculty and how they thought they would work in my committee, for example. So yeah.
I can go next. So my first year, it was good. Also an adjustment for sure. But I do have the privilege of not being so far away from my family, and they are like one of my biggest support systems. I'm like 4 hours away from them, so if I need to go like drive home, for the weekend, I can do that, which has helped a lot. Um, do like okay, you have to prioritize things. I know you're gonna want to like it. I may be talking for other people, but like for me, I wanted to get involved in so many different things because I was like, oh, I gotta make friends. I gotta, get my name out there, network and all this stuff. You could do that, but focus on your classes, focus on, your research, making connections within the lab, and taking care of yourself. Those need to be priority, especially taking care of yourself, because if you don't do that, you're not going to be able to do anything. Um, and one thing I wish I had done early on is make an appointment with the Student Counseling Center. If anyone, is like, into counseling or whatever, I would say do that. And like do that now before there's a whole bunch of new students coming in, like get your appointment now because um it's so nice having just a release, being able to talk to someone just about like everything that's going on inside because when you get into like everything, it's gonna feel literally like a hurricane. And you need to have time to like get all of that out. And because it can like build and build and build. And then you may get to the point where you're just like, oh, I can't do it. I can't do it anymore. But you've made it so far, you can't like it's just the first year. You know what I mean? And you have to pace yourself. So yeah, that is definitely something I would have done earlier on. Um, and yeah, like I said, take that time for yourself. Because that's just as important as getting the degree. So
Yeah, piggybacking off of Ashley, I highly recommend therapy. I've started it ever since I started my PhD. So it's been really great, especially when you're trying to navigate all of these expectations that you have on you, like that are external and internal. For example, I have really high standards for myself and high expectations for myself, but sometimes that can clash with the expectations of my advisor or of my professors I'm taking courses with. So just having that kind of outlet to basically just talk about all of your feelings and let it all out truly helped me a lot. And also just finding your outlets. So, for example, like having hobbies. For me, I really love building Legos. So, I kind of started getting into building a lot more Legos and balancing my time that way in terms of here's my stress relief activity. to get rid of all of the negative emotions I'm feeling throughout like everything that happens during the day. But kind of going back to my first year of PhD, kind of like I mentioned, it was very different. Um, I was kind of in a limbo between my cohorts because I technically started my postbac with the last year's cohort and then trying to figure out and navigate new friendships with the actual cohort I'm in was really difficult. But what helped me the most was joining the Grad Student Association, getting involved with them. Since I was here for my postbac, I was actually able to get into a leadership role into the Grad Student Association. So that helped me a lot in finding new people, communicating and connecting with a wide variety of people not only in my department, but also within other departments like engineering, biological sciences, which truly helped me just build my support system, which I highly recommend is just, slowly kind of don't feel like you have to do everything all at once. It's okay to kind of take your time in connecting with people. Start to join stuff slowly because like Felix and Ashley were saying, it could be really overwhelming starting your grad school career. So focus on all your priorities, get all of the nitpicky related, like program related stuff out of the hair, and then start, digging into, oh, what are the organizations I want to join? Who are the people I want to connect with? Because both things are very important. So, yeah.
Great. Thank you, everybody. And I'm moving on to the next question. How did you develop a working relationship with your supervisor and the lab members? And what were the community building activities that you participated, either within or outside of your department?
I can go first on this one. So the rotations definitely helped figure out the vibe of the lab and like see who, who's cool to like chit chat with and who will be honest with you about the PI and like the lab environment and like if they're cool with like letting you take vacation or like if you're sick, are they gonna, be upset about that? Because some PIs will be, especially if it's a new PI and like you're the only person in the lab or it's just like you and the lab manager and you have a lot of responsibilities. And that was something that I dealt with. I was stuck between choosing Dr. Lubin, who has been a PI for 16 years, or this new PI who literally just started like 3 months before I rotated in the lab. And that lab, I was like, oh my gosh, this is perfect. Like the project is perfect. But as I got to like know the people in the lab, I was like, you know what? I don't think I can do 4 years in this lab. Like even though the project was literally perfect, like to the T. And so I got to know them just, asking questions, being like, hey, can you help me with so and so? And they just always seem like so like, oh, you should know this already. You should like, why don't you know this? And I'm like, I'm just a baby. What do you mean? I'm just a first year student. But Dr. Lubin's lab, everyone is so supportive. I can ask them literally like, what's 2 + 2? And they were like, girl, let's get a calculator. You know? They're not gonna judge. And I learned that during the rotation. I was like, okay, this place feels like home. Now with my PI, since she's so established, she pretty much has like her scheduled like how she meets with her students laid out. So she and I meet once a week, one-on-one, and then we have lab meetings every week. So everyone gets together, talks about their experiments, really just like catching up, things like that. And then yesterday, actually, we went out to Korean barbecue. So that was fun. So we'll do stuff like that. She like cooked for us a little while ago. So things like that. So I would say try to find a mentor who likes to interact with the people in their lab. Because that's going to be important because you're going to have to interact with them, for however long. So,
Yeah, I could go next. Kind of piggybacking off of Ashley again. I think having those one-on-one conversations is really important in actually fostering this working relationship. For me specifically, as a part of our requirements in BME, we do have to do individual development plans or IDPs that are kind of working through, hey, what are your goals for your career? What research goals you want to do over the semester, well-being, etc. And so that really helped me kind of outline how I want to talk to my advisor. And then based off of that, I was actually able to get a better working relationship with her because we found some similarities where I mentioned, oh, I like building Legos. And she was like, I also like building Legos. So through those, you can kind of find new nuances that you might not find without asking, right? And I also just make an initiative to ask, how are you doing in the beginning of every meeting, just to, check in, because that's very important for me to see how are people doing. I would also appreciate if people also ask me that. So just kind of reciprocating. And then with lab members, I think what helped me the most is inviting them. So, hey, I'm going to eat lunch if you want to eat lunch together. And then we just talk about stuff that are not really work related. And also that way you kind of get to know each other. And when you might have some issues in lab, then you could kind of go to them to say, hey, this is how I'm feeling. Do you have any suggestions on how to go about it? And again, for community building, highly just recommend joining organizations. I actually found a lot of my friends through classes as well. So just, connecting, don't be afraid to, connect and share, hey, I really don't know what I'm doing in this class. Can you help me? Because for the most part, a lot of people don't know what they're doing. So just be honest with yourself and yeah, but
And I think this question is like a little bit harder for me because I was the first student in my lab, so I didn't have much of a choice. And like we don't do rotations, but I did know my advisor like beforehand. And there is another master's student that came in with me, and then luckily we all, the three of us, and my advisor and both of us, get along super, super well. So I was lucky in that way because I didn't really get much of a choice. I mean, yeah, I did choose to apply to his lab, but like I didn't have any information about how he was as a PI. So I just took a gamble on this one, but it worked out really well. My lab also, my advisor did do his master's here at UConn, so he still knew some of the professors that are still teaching now. So his old advisor is still here. So she has like a postdoc and like I think two grad students. So sometimes we do like joint lab meetings for that lab. So I guess that was also my other way of making connections around the department. But yeah, we do like team building. Sometimes if there's a speaker that kind of relates to our research in some way, our advisor kind of organizes like a dinner after the seminar day, and then we can just go get dinner all together. And regarding activities in and outside the department, um, the department has their graduate student association and there's a social committee. So everybody that is interested in that. I joined this semester, so we'll see how that goes. But we plan activities and do things for fun. We have bar week. We actually don't go to any bars. We go get boba. There's not a single bar in the list, but it's called bar week. We do that every semester and we just get to see different places, boba, desserts, whatever people are honestly craving, whoever signs up for it. And we all just go together and do things like that. And then we have like book clubs and things like that. But also around the grad school, there's also been a bigger push for the graduate student senate, like overall at UConn to do activities. And I know they've done a lot of like picnics and things like that recently. So I haven't been to any, but I'm hoping that this semester I get the chance to actually go to one of the graduate student senate events and get to interact with other grad students outside of my department as well.
Great. Thanks, everybody. Now for our final question before going into the Q&A, and we'll get to the questions in the Q&A shortly. Feel free to add additional questions as you see fit. But the last question is, how were you able to balance your workload, your well-being, and your finances during your first year of grad school?
I could start off with this one. So in terms of everything, I think the first thing I would suggest is find out what works best for you. So for me, in terms of my work, I know my brain works better in the morning. So I do all of the tasks related to things that require more of my brain power in the morning, like research related, like writing, for example, or finishing assignments for classes. And then for self-care, I do have this rule where I do everything on campus, and then as soon as I come home, I do not touch work. And that's kind of my way of promoting self-care. Obviously, on weekends, sometimes, kind of have to do some work, but I give myself exceptions to that extent. And so that's been working out for me, but I know a lot of people work differently, so find out what works best for yourself. And then in terms of finances, so we get paid bi-weekly. And so when I'm looking for a place, for example, I try to make sure my rent and all of the related expenses fit within one paycheck. So then I still have the other paycheck to kind of help with groceries or savings, which try to save as much as possible if you can. But I know it's really difficult with the grad student stipend that you might be getting. But what helped me was I started a high yield savings account and I slowly just put in like $50 or $100 from paychecks once I figure out kind of what my budgeting strategy is. And kind of in terms of finally like the workload, um, again, try to balance what you have based on how you work. So I have everything in my Google Calendar, which is my savior. So I put all of my assignments on there, and based on my work day, I kind of fill in, okay, this is where I can work on this assignment because I know my brain's working then. Or, hey, I'm going to do this research task in the afternoon because I don't really need to use my brain as much, stuff like that. But that's worked for me. Yeah.
I can go next. So I struggle with budgeting. I will be honest about that. And we get paid monthly, which sucks. So I really had to be strict about what I do with my money, essentially. And so, what I recommend, and this is what I do, I have like an Excel sheet of my necessities. So, like, I know I need groceries, I know I need gas, I know I need, medication, things like the things that you need every month. Keep a list of that, keep track of about how much you spend every month and keep those, like don't touch that amount. The other, I like to try to put something away for savings. And you have to have fun. You have to, get a little treat for yourself. That's important. So try to put some money away for that. But it takes time. It really does take time to adjust to what you're going to be paid and like how, how you live life in this new period. So have grace with yourself. It's okay. But yeah, try to budget as well as possible. I will say that. Balancing workload. Yeah, I definitely have started doing work in the lab, leave it there, try not to do it at home because your home is gonna be like your safe space. And you don't want to come home and be like, oh my gosh, I got to do more work. Like, no, you want to come home and like play Stardew Valley or something, or like watch TV. It's something I wanted to mention earlier, and this is something I learned in counseling, but make a list of things you like to do for yourself, like by yourself, and then also make a list of things that you like to do with friends, and try to do at least the things for yourself. Try to do that every day because you want to have something to look forward to at the end of the day, be like, oh my gosh, this was such a hard day, but at least I can come home and like have a little pizza or like watch Gordon Ramsay, That's what I like to. So do that as well. And then well-being, yeah. Book an appointment with the counseling center for sure. If that's something that you're interested in doing, and take time for yourself. Be kind with yourself. You have to take breaks. And that's something that I've had to learn the hard way. Because I ended up having to withdraw during my undergrad program because I was not taking care of myself. And I don't know what happened, but I ended up not being able to read or speak for like 2 weeks. And so, and it was just because my body was under so much stress and I just like shut down. And so I've gotten to the point now where it's like I've made it too far, and I'm like, okay, it's okay. If I need to take a day, that's cool. Don't beat yourself up for that. So yeah, you'll figure out the schedule that works for you. It just takes time. So
Yeah, and I agree with everything everyone said. I personally think I noticed that I was kind of just like letting my health slide, and I was like pushing doctor's appointments away so I can like focus on doing what I needed to do for work or like classes or whatever. And I was like, that can wait till December when I don't have classes. But looking back now, I think I would have saved a lot more troubles if I had done all these like appointments for myself when I should have. So don't push those things aside. Workload, I mean, I think after a couple of weeks, I got a groove of classes and research things. So I think that's something that just takes time to figure out. And like honestly, what some people told me didn't work for me, like what the other people did. So I just have to find my own way of managing things. I'm also very organized. I like to have little to do lists, sticky notes on my computer because it feels satisfying to like finish it and just rip it off. So I think that works for me. Um, Finances, during when I was on fellowship, I got paid monthly as well. But now that I'm gonna TA, I'm gonna be paid bi-weekly, so we'll see how that changes. But I'm personally not the best at budgeting or saving, but I think I've found the balance that works for me right now because I like to like do things, have fun. I like to buy myself things when I can. So sometimes if I did need extra money, I would find a little side gig. I started doing DoorDash, like if I needed some extra money, just so I could do fun stuff and like travel, go home to Puerto Rico and things like that. So if that was money I needed, I was able to do that. I know that's not something everybody can do, but it's something that I know also a lot of other grad students in the department do, like if they need that extra income because sometimes the stipend is not enough. So yeah, and just chatting with your advisor is also good when it comes to like setting your boundaries for research. I personally try not to have to be on campus Fridays. Like I try not to schedule anything Fridays that I know I'm gonna have to be on campus for. If there's something that happens to be like a meeting, like there's a one-off meeting that I have to schedule on a Friday, then I'll do it. But I just like to have Fridays to work at home if I can and just lay here with my dog. So yeah, and finding things like others have said that you like. I like to play video games with my friends and my partner, like in the afternoons and nights. So that's something that I always had to look forward to, and kind of kept me sane during work, like knowing that I'll have that with my friends. So finding something is important.
Great. Thank you, Ashley, Sushma, and Felix, for those really great words of advice. So now is the Q&A portion of our webinar. So, feel free to keep the questions coming. I'll probably start off, well, let me start off in order. I would say someone asked, and, anyone feel free to answer this one. How will you prepare for your first year of your PhD?
Hmm, I would say kind of what I've said already, kind of get like your self-care plan in order. And I know I'm like talking about this so much is because that was a big mistake that I made, was not prioritizing myself and prioritizing the work and like trying to make good impressions, which are important, of course. But you can't do that if you're not taking care of you. So I would say get those habits in place now. If you want to work out in the morning, set aside time for that. Try to make a schedule for yourself before you get started with classes. Get a planner. Try to lay out all of your stuff. Also, write in your planner with pencil because the amount of times I've had to like go back and like scratch things out because I end up not doing an experiment that day and I'm like, oh, well, I gotta push it. And my planner looks so horrible. So if you're someone who like likes to keep it all organized and neat, I'd say write it in pencil. But definitely get a planner. Definitely have that Excel sheet for your budget. Try to have that laid out before, you get started. Um, Try to get like medications in order, appointments set up, things like that, like things you don't even think about until you're like, oh my gosh, I need to go to the doctor. It's like try to get that stuff out of the way now, get established with the healthcare center on campus. Um, but yeah, I would say do all the kind of boring stuff, but you have to do it, kind of do that first. So when things get hectic, you'll be like, okay, well, I've got this out of the way, so it's fine. But yeah, that's what I say. Try to be as organized going in as possible.
Also, try to find a dentist and a primary care doctor. That took way too long. I never realized how long that was actually going to take to find an appointment. So I need a my primary care doctor, and I moved from Puerto Rico to Connecticut. So like that was like it wasn't an option to like go back home to deal with that really quickly. So and then when I called, they were like, "Oh yeah, we have an appointment in like 4 months." I was like, "Well, no, I need an appointment now." And that was pretty much every doctor I called in the area. So I ended up having to. My primary care doctor is like an hour drive away from where I live now, which is crazy compared like there's so many doctors actually around. But if I had done that when I should have when I first moved, then I feel like that's something that would have done been easier. Also dentists, so try to find that. But I feel like I will also, looking back, I wish I was a little bit calmer about going into grad school. Like, I also was like, oh my God, how do I prepare? I need to prepare. I wish I had just taken a little bit slow and just kind of enjoyed the process because, like, I think I overstressed myself with a lot of things that didn't need to be stressed about. Like, all those deadlines that they mentioned on orientation that are so far away. I have not thought of that ever since that week. Like, now until yeah, I needed to submit my committee at the end of the year, but I did it and that was it. And I remember being so stressed at that during that time. And then I was also stressed that I didn't feel ready or that I didn't feel prepared. So I wish I had taken it a little bit slower and given myself some more grace about like actually preparing and actually enjoying the process.
Yeah, I think I'd kind of say the same things that everyone has said. And also, add in all of your deadlines into a calendar or wherever you like to stay organized for your classes, meetings, etc. Because that honestly is my saving grace, even to this day, is just having everything written down on my calendar. Just because I feel like my brain just can't hold all of that information anymore. So it's just nice to have kind of this primary place where you could go to say, oh, this is what I need to complete, this is the date that it needs to be due or that it's due, so stuff like that. But that's kind of my main advice.
This one's a little bit relevant, but feel free to expand. What is the most important thing you knew before starting your program? Yeah.
That's a good question, and I'm really trying to think. Um, I would say one of my strongest qualities coming in was that I was like really comfortable in my technical skills. Um, and so that helped me when like facing things that I wasn't comfortable with. I was like, okay, I know that I can pipette. We're good there. And so think about your strengths. Think about those. If you need to, list them out, go back to them and be like, you know what? I am good at this. Because there will be days where you just seem like there's nothing going right. And be like, but at least I know how to pipette. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know how to answer that. That's a really good question. Um, let's see, because you can't, I'll say this, you can't prepare too much because it's hard to know what to expect until you get into it. And even then, you'll be like, what's happening? So I would just say take it easy. Like Felix was saying, try to be calm in this first little moment because this is gonna be the calmest moment you're gonna have for a little bit. So take advantage of that. Try not to over prepare because you really can't. So yeah.
And I'd just like to add, I started doing this thing where I have like a good vibes folder, if that makes sense. So like every time I'm down, I kind of click on that and it's everything that makes me happy or my accomplishments, stuff like that to kind of remind myself, okay, I am here for a reason. So like it's okay. I will get through it. Kind of like Ashley was saying, having that little thing of I know my skills. I know I can pipette. I know I can get through this. Everything's gonna be okay. And also, my favorite phrase now is like just take it one thing at a time. So get through this one thing, and then we can think about the others. Just because I know for myself, I will spiral if I keep thinking about the future. So, you don't have to have everything figured out in this moment, and it's gonna be okay. But yes.
Yeah, I agree with everything everyone has said. I just always tell myself it's not that serious. because at the end of the day, I can't do anything else. Like that's just how I get through it. I'm just like, it's not that serious. All you can do is laugh. But
And then the next one is does the GPA from the courses of your PhD matter?
So, oh, Felix, did you want to go or?
no, go ahead.
Okay, so thanks. So I know for our program, we do need to do, I think it's a 3.0 overall GPA. You basically need to get a B minus or above in all your classes in order for it to count for your plan of study. And I believe we had like a requirement of it has to be like above a 3.0 as your overall kind of GPA. So they do matter to a certain extent, but after you're done with your PhD, in my opinion, I don't think it really matters because you have a degree, you're a doctor, it does not matter. So it basically matters up until you graduate, is kind of my theory. So yeah.
And my advisor always told me that that grade doesn't really matter. It's more about what you actually learn from the class. So focus on actually learning. I mean, yeah, pass it, that's for sure, but I think that's never really like the issue. I think usually for me at least it's always between getting a B and getting an A, like what that like is that really gonna make much of a difference? It's gonna take a lot of time out of other things I could do. So it's just about setting that boundary. And I think now I would say it doesn't matter, like as long as you pass it and get that like requirement done, but the actual like grade per se doesn't matter. And that's kind of what I've gathered from faculty and talking to other students as well.
Yeah, I was gonna say the exact same thing. Pass the class because it honestly doesn't matter what grade you get as long as you get those requirements out of the way. And like for us, our core classes at the beginning, we have to take like biochem, genetics, and something else. I don't remember. But people fail them. They don't get kicked out of the program. You're able to take it again. So just try your best and pass it and try not to worry too much about the GPA. You will have a lot of other things to worry about for sure. So let that one not be, too stressful. Just do what you can.
Great. And then we have a question from Julie. How was the transition of moving to your current institution?
It was a culture shock to me. So I am born and raised in Virginia, and then I went to school in Richmond, Virginia, which is very city-like. And then I got to Purdue, which was in the middle of cornfields. So very different vibe, very different climate. I think even to this day, I still kind of have struggles in terms of figuring out what I like here, if that makes sense. So it will be a work in progress depending on the climate you change to. Just know that, again, there are people there who are also going through similar things that you could talk to find support. And also just, take it one thing at a time. It's going to be okay. First, get a place, to stay, find out where the groceries shops are, find out how to get transportation. For me, I use the bus system, so figure that out. Just kind of take it one thing at a time. Here are my basic necessities that I need to figure out, and then take it from there, is kind of my advice. So, yeah.
I moved from Puerto Rico to Connecticut, so it was a big shock when it came to everything, basically, from just having people speaking Spanish all the time, like at home and around, to like just being surrounded by people that spoke English was rough. And also the climate, it gets really cold here really, really soon. It's already being like it's still August and it's getting really cold here, at least for me. Like in my book, it's really cold. So you can imagine in the winter when I saw snow for the first time ever, I was like, wow. So it was a big adjustment and just not having family around. Like I grew up around my family. I went to school super close to home, so I had my family around all the time. So that was definitely a big adjustment. And just living on my own, I live with family in undergrad, so this was my first time like living on my own for longer periods of time, besides just like doing internships away in the summers. So that was a big shock. Definitely, I think the most important thing for me when it came to like moving was one, being able to have my own mode of transportation, and two, of being somewhere I felt comfortable and safe in, and wanted like somewhere I would feel nice coming in after work. So that's kind of where my priorities were when it came to like where I wanted to end up living, but also just chat with people. I definitely appreciated my department because they were really helpful trying to help me find a place and like get adjusted and knowing where things are and stuff like that.
For me, I didn't think it was gonna be that big of a culture shock because I moved from Mississippi to Alabama. But it was. It was, and I think that was because kind of similar to what Felix was saying, that I have been around my family, like I'm around them like 24/7. And so now being away from them, even though I'm 4 hours away, that has been hard to adjust to. And so one of the things that I like really wanted to do when I first moved was to find a community outside of my program. So that when I'm like, I don't want to talk about science. I'm sorry. I don't want to talk about science today. I want to go play. I want to go play golf. I want to go do something. Find a group of people if you want to, because I'm kind of a social person, but I do love to be silent. But when I want to be social, I want to like crochet with people. I want to like go to the library because they'll have like activities and stuff at the library. But yeah, I would say if that's something you are interested in, find a group of people outside of the research so that, you can like turn your brain off for a little bit. And that will help with the loneliness because for me, yeah, not being around my family all the time definitely hit pretty hard. And like I wasn't able to bring my pet. So that was also not great. But yeah, but having those people to hang out with outside and also just having things to do by myself is nice. So,
Great. And then the next one is, how do you manage PI expectations and be able to ask questions to them that may seem simple?
For me, it's all about like how you communicate the questions. So very early on with my advisor, I would kind of ask in a way that I'm like, hey, I'm looking at this paper or I'm reading about this and I don't really understand this. Could you help me clarify X, Y, and Z thing? But also remember that you're a first year. You're not supposed to know everything. Even if you're in your third or fourth year, you still don't know everything. So it's okay to ask these questions. Also choose an advisor that doesn't make you feel bad for asking these questions. That was one of the main reasons why I decided to stay with my advisor is because she was very much upfront about, you can ask any questions. I am here to help. Don't worry about like X, Y, and Z thing. Now for the little, like what might seem as little things, I do ask more of this more senior people in my lab in terms of, hey, like, how do I do X thing in the lab? Or where do I find X thing in the lab? Stuff like that. But my main advice is choose the advisor and lab that is not going to make you feel dumb for asking questions because everyone needs the knowledge. You're not going to gain the knowledge without asking questions. So, yes.
um, yeah, 100%. Because I kind of talked about this earlier, but one of the labs I thought I wanted to join, I was not, every time I asked a question, I felt like the dumbest person in the room. And that is not, it's not a good feeling. It's just not, especially when you know you deserve to be there. I'm here for a reason. I'm literally getting a PhD. Don't talk to me like, I don't know what I'm talking about. I just had a simple question. So, yes, definitely be in an environment where you feel comfortable asking questions. And one of my favorite sayings, and my mentor is like, oh, I'm going to use that all the time, is a closed mouth doesn't get fed. You have to speak up for yourself. You really do. Even if you think it's not like it's not important, just try. The worst they can say is, "Oh, no, that's silly," and they're not going to say that. Um, so yeah, ask questions. Um, be surrounded by people who make you feel comfortable doing that. And the whole reason why you're doing this, like getting this degree, is to ask questions. That's like the whole point. You're trying to figure something out. Um, and so if you're not in an environment where you feel good to do that, it's not a good like science environment, essentially. So
Yeah, I agree. And I definitely think it's just also as you ask your advisor questions, I think you gauge how they react. And once you see that they are hopefully very supportive about it, you'll stop feeling, at least in my experience, those nerves of asking questions. Now I just kind of ask questions and I get the answer. But at the beginning, I was also scared of being seen as like I don't know what I'm talking about, or like I'm not ready for this or whatever. But I think after a month or two of just asking all these questions, I kind of got over that fear, at least with my PI. So I think if you're in a supportive environment, I think you're definitely gonna find your footing there and like feel comfortable eventually.
Great. And then maybe this more relevant a little bit towards choosing a PI, but I would say what are some red flags from PIs in the interviews?
Mm, red flags for the interviews. I would say um ask about like what they think about vacation time. Ask about, and if you're interested in having a family, I would mention that as well because you can tell really early on if they're going to be like, oh yeah, I understand that you want to start a family later on in your PhD or like your degree. That's cool. It's like as long as you get the work done, whatever. And that's how my mentor is. She's like, you can take a break. You don't have to come in as long as the work gets done. Oh well. Um, so I would say that's definitely something to mention. Also, talk to the students. The students will tell you straight up. They will be like, "Ooh, I don't know. I don't know about that." But I will also say take what they say with a grain of salt because a lot of people that I talked to about my mentor, when I told them I was going to rotate with her, they're like, "Ooh, I wouldn't do that," or like all this stuff. And I'm like, "Okay," but I did it anyway, and I had a wonderful time. So listen to what the students have to say, listen to what other people have to say, but at the end of the day, it's your decision and you'll be able to you'll be able to figure it out in the meetings with them. You'll be able to see, oh, I like their vibe or like, ooh, I don't really like their vibe. But yeah, just put yourself out there and like talk to people for sure.
Yeah, and I think for me, it was more so looking at how the students are interacting. So, for example, I went into this interview, I was looking at this lab, and you could kind of see the faces of these grad students is just sad. It's like it seems very grumpy or like very like they're not having a good time. And that's when I kind of knew, okay, the advisor is seeming like they're a good person and they're good lab. However, the students are not feeling that way. And I would also ask about the work hours because that will be a tell-all in terms of, oh, like, are you overworking your students or can I choose my own work hours, stuff like that. So, yeah.
I think at least from my perspective, it was mostly like when I was applying since I didn't do rotations, but I definitely saw a lot of PIs that I felt have different expectations and priorities when it came to like what students did. So I think I valued a lot of like outreach and science communication efforts as part of like my training overall. So when I found that somebody didn't seem as supportive or excited to talk about that as others, I thought that was like gonna be a like probably not the best fit for me. And like looking back now, I agree even more. But also just like what other students say, I've kind of applied that more towards my committee, like building my committee based on what other people's experiences with certain PIs in the department have been when it came to having them in their committees. So yeah.
Great. With this, now I'm going to ask a couple questions as a whole. So feel free to answer any of them. So I'll probably ask the first one. How do you deal with imposter syndrome during the first year? Like the classic, I don't want to look stupid if I ask X question, or I don't want the PI to regret accepting me in a lab, so I won't ask X, or I'll do X. In addition to that one, I will ask, how did you go about finding mentors besides your PI?
So, one thing for me was reminding myself I am here for a reason. And that's kind of where my folder came into place. And also just making sure that my advisor also knows that I'm starting off as a first year. I'm not supposed to know anything or everything. I am coming from a very different background, stuff like that. And I think that has helped me a lot in terms of navigating how do I feel within the lab. And in terms of external mentors, highly recommend reaching out to, I think ours rebranded because we can't use DEI anymore, but the Office of Graduate Studies or Professional Development is kind of what it's called now. So reaching out to them, seeking out any advice. Sometimes there are directors that focus on advisor relationships, which really helped me, just because, you don't know all of the logistics that come around with being an advisor or navigating that kind of field in that way. So it was really nice for me to find those people as mentors. And also, Cientifico Latino helped a lot in terms of just finding community outside of um, my department, my institution, and also people with like-minded mentality. So, highly recommend. But yeah.
I think
Oh, sorry.
for imposter syndrome, I think I always just I'm telling myself like, what's the worst that's really gonna happen if this fake scenario in my head is actually gonna like go on? Like, and I don't know. I think that personally just helps me stay grounded and like it's really not that serious and it's not the end of the world. And if somebody does think my question is stupid, then like that speaks more on them as future mentors and like scientists than it does on me for asking a question. So I just try to always keep myself grounded about things like that. Like it doesn't really matter. And a lot of the things that I personally think might go wrong are actually a reflection on other people if they do go wrong rather than a reflection on me. And I think that helps me a lot. So.
Yeah, kind of like we've talked about already, but you deserve to be where you are. Like you've gotten to this place because, of your work ethic, how smart you are, how dedicated you are, how passionate you are. And it's important to remember those things because there will be days where you're like, oh my gosh, I got here by a fluke. Like, how did I make it here? But you deserve to be where you are. And so yeah, and your mentor should not, like, when you ask a question to them, they should never like belittle you or be like, "Oh, that's such a silly question." Or like, "Oh, why would you ask me that?" Um, and they should also give you grace because you were a first year. But like even throughout your PhD or your degree, you you deserve grace. Because like this is your first time doing this. So you're not going to have all the answers. If you had all the answers, you'd have the degree. So, and that's something that my mentor has like really been trying to hammer into me because my first year, I was like, okay, I'm about to defend like tomorrow. I gotta have my committee like done. And she's like, Ashley, you have to slow down. You just got here. We just figure out your question, you're working up to it. And that's literally like the whole degree. You are like it's a marathon and people say that all the time, but it is. You have to take your time, you have to pace yourself, and be kind to yourself. And the people around you should be kind to you as well. And if they're not, try to find another place, please. Like try to find another lab. Other mentors, we have career coaches at UAB. And so I've got two career coaches who kind of help me like because I do want to have a family like towards the end. And so one of my career coaches, she had a family towards the end of her degree. And so she's helping me like kind of plan out like I don't know, just kind of like mentally prepare for that, I guess, and how to like advocate for myself when that time does come. So yeah, try to find people who will help you, in that way and make you feel comfortable.
Great. And our next two questions are, what's your method when it comes to keeping up with deadlines organization-wise? How do you approach tackling tasks that have similar deadlines? And on a similar note, how do you set limits with time management? Like if you only do work at work and not at home, how do you not stay at lab until midnight or go home at 3 p.m.?
So, I think that when it comes to like setting that boundary, I I also don't tr I try not to do a lot of work at home, except if it's like for classes. Like if I'm taking a class and there's classwork, then I can do that at home. But I usually try to leave lab at like 5 p.m. and that's kind of my max. I don't think I've stayed later than that. Like doing work stuff. I might have stayed like if we have again class stuff and we're doing like a coding assignment and we're all there, so things like that. But I try to leave campus by 5 for like work related stuff, and I just don't touch it at home because I want to play with my dog. I don't want to do anything else. So like I just have my like like I just that's how I work, and I just set that boundary also in addition to not working at home, because if I don't work at home and I'll just stay. So I understand the question, but it's just about setting that boundary there too. Then like if you feel like you're gonna want to work longer, if you decide not to work at home, then maybe you should work at home, because maybe that's kind of what works for you too though. So like don't feel pressure to set those boundaries just because that's what works for other people. But because I know a lot of my friends do really good work at home too, and like they just that's how they work. They work on campus until 2 p.m. and then they leave and go home and just spend the rest of the day until 8 p.m. if that's what they want to do working, and that works for them. I don't think that would work for me, but that doesn't mean that it's a wrong way to do it. So.
Kind of like Sushma has mentioned, Google Calendar has been my best friend. Because you will forget about deadlines. And what I like about Google Calendar, and I'm sure other calendars do this, but you can set the notifications for like a week in advance, which has really helped me because I'll like double book, but if I get the notification like, oh, you have this coming up, I'm like, oh, let me not sign up for that then. It's also important to prioritize things. Um, I made the mistake of like trying to do way too many things my first year because I was like, well, every opportunity that comes up, I have to do it. You do not have to do it. And what I've learned is that a lot of the events that come up that I wanted to do, they're like annual or they're like monthly or something like that. So you don't have to do it all right now. You can wait. And then there was another question about like conferences and like presenting and things. You do not have to do that your first year. Um, I would recommend you don't because you're going to have a lot on your plate already, and that's going to be a lot of pressure trying to get all the data that you want to talk about and just like prepare for that. So if you are able to not do that, I would say don't, because you will have opportunities to do that. But yeah, prioritize what's important now, and the other opportunities, they will come back. You'll be okay. You'll be okay. But yeah, Google Calendar for sure.
Yes, and also prioritizing what takes time, if that makes sense. So for some of my classes, I might finish those assignments in like 30 minutes versus others, it takes like days, right? So prioritizing, kind of figuring out what class requires what for you, is very important. And then based on that, I might start an assignment like a week in advance if I know it's going to take a longer period of time versus for the ones that take like 20 to 30 minutes, I might have to do it the day before, which I'm not used to because in undergrad I would always kind of be on top of things. But with grad school, you have a lot more responsibilities with research, so you also have to balance prioritizing all of your research related experiments and writing and all of that stuff. And then also in terms of time management, for me, the sad reality is I do have to work longer some days, especially when I was preparing for my qualifying exam and looking forward for my preliminary exam. Like, I will have to work longer hours. And that's just a reality because you can't do everything within the span of the working day, especially if you have experiments, stuff like that. But for me, like it's a very big boundary that I don't bring work back home. And so even if that means, okay, I need to stay in lab later. I do have a cutoff time, which is usually when the buses stop running because I need to get home. So that could also work. So I try to get out of lab by like 10 or 11 max. I luckily haven't had to stay that late, so that's good. But kind of working with that in terms of, okay, like even after if I have to work longer hours today, then maybe the next day I'll take shorter hours, et cetera, et cetera. I also, especially when I was taking immunology, I would come in at like 6 a.m. just to study because I knew I needed that extra 2 hours before I did all of my lab stuff to actually use my brain and get all of the information. So again, it's working with what works best for you and what your boundaries are. But yeah.
Great. And then for this one, I'm gonna ask three questions at once, but they're all very relevant. So it's just different stages of life. So I would say the first one is, what was your biggest adjustment from undergrad to grad school? What was the highlight of your first year? And where do you see yourself after your PhD?
I can go first. So I will say, highlight of my PhD was, well, not the PhD, the first year. I wish the PhD was over. The highlight of the first year was really getting my project off the ground, I will say, because I am doing a completely new thing to the lab. I'm looking at a completely new like cell type to the lab and like a whole bunch of different things, and it's very exciting. It's very stressful, but it's very exciting. And so yeah, that's super exciting for me. What I plan on doing after my PhD, I would love to work in industry. I'd love to develop some type of drug for Alzheimer's or Parkinson's disease. And so I'm trying to like make my project kind of fit that, but it may not. And that's okay. Just do the work that you can and make connections with. So we have a training program in neurodegeneration at UAB. And so I go to those meetings pretty regularly, and they help with like planning for a career like that. So I would say if that's something you're interested in doing, find organizations that can help get you to that path. And then for me, I did not get to grad school directly out of undergrad. I worked in a hospital for a couple years, so um, it was an adjustment having to jump back into classes for sure. Technical skills, great, because I was like, all of that. But like academically, that was a challenge. And so I will say, give yourself grace, because like I hadn't done it for 2 years. And so it's like it's okay to struggle. And yeah, I would just say, like I've said, give yourself grace, be kind to yourself, and like make a community with the people in your classes for sure, because you can get like study groups or like study sessions. Some people tutor. So if that's like the area that you struggle with, definitely use those resources. But yeah, try to use the resources available to you for sure.
Yeah, I think for me, the adjustment was interesting because I was going from like I don't even know. Like, I feel like I would stay up until like 1 or 2 a.m. in undergrad to now I need to go to bed by like 10 p.m. So, like, it was a very different adjustment in terms of how I'm spending my days. Because in undergrad, I would be fine doing assignments at like 9 p.m., 10 p.m. But then now, I realize I do need to do it earlier in the day, just because that's how my brain kind of works now. And also just fitting in your research, it's tough doing it all, like doing both research classes and everything while going like home and then doing extra stuff. Like it's just hard to balance everything and keep the undergrad life during your grad school. So that was kind of my main adjustment was figuring out my time schedule and when I like to work, etc. In terms of the highlight of my first year, I think it would be more on the organization end. So I was the president, co-president of the Grad Student Association in my first year. And so I was actually able to worked through like the research symposium. We planned and executed a research symposium, which was really well attended, and I was really proud of that and all the hard work. And also, I was able to connect to someone in my undergrad to ask them to give a seminar talk here at Purdue. So I think that was kind of my main highlight. Was tr doing all of that while balancing research and classes and just getting through that. And what I plan on doing after my PhD. So initially, I wanted to be a professor, but now I'm leaning more in terms of industry and going into the vaccine field. But in the future, I would like to kind of be like a visiting professor at some of the universities like closer to where I end up, just because I do want to keep that teaching and mentoring mindset going. So it's just about me.
Yeah, and I guess for me, I get during undergrad, I was always taking so many classes. Like I took whatever elective I thought was cool, and like that was kind of my main focus. Like I was doing research, but like that was also just not the thing I was doing, if that makes sense. Like it's an undergrad, I was just taking the classes, and like that was kind of my main priority. Versus in grad school, that's kind of now like I guess the least of my priorities when it comes to like the things I'm doing, because it just feels like it's so like doesn't have the same sort of impact as like the research I'm doing does for my career. Um Favorite part, I got to go to Malaysia to do a workshop, and it was all paid for by my advisor's startup money. So that was like a really fun experience to get to work on research and like develop new skills while being somewhere so new and interesting. And just like having that experience has been helpful. But also presenting at a conference, I did go this year. And I thought it was a great learning experience. It was a smaller conference, the American Society of Parasitologists, and I kind of just presented what I was doing right now, and it was kind of just like more open-ended as to like this is still ongoing. So I didn't feel a lot of pressure to do it. And it was kind of my advisor just kind of suggested it, so I did it. So yeah, and after the PhD, I also originally said academia if you had asked me like when I started, but now I'm like leaning more to working at like either a science museum or something like that. It's like a curator or some sort of like research role there, or in industry some way, some kind of like bioinformatics role, something like that probably. But that's kind of my plans right now. But ask me again next year, maybe I'll say academia again. But right now, I don't know.
Great. And our next two is how do you prepare yourself for rigorous reading required in grad school? And on a separate note, how do you balance stress in school while catching up with your family?
I can start with this one. When it comes to catching up with family, that's important to me. Like I call my mom pretty much every day. And I try to call my grandma also every day, even if I do it while I'm on my way to school or like on my way back, and even if it's just for a couple of minutes, I do that. And I also try to check up on my friends back home too. Like that's very important to me. So I always make the time. And if I need sometimes it's just if I need a break from reading, it's going to the next question, I just call my friends. For reading, my advisor gave me a lot of reading material when I started, like a lot of textbooks and a lot of chapters and a lot of papers. So it was about just getting through that first chunk, at least for me, and then then it just kept like it keeps piling on and on. Like I never really finished it. Like they kept adding more and more papers and more like resources and things like that. So there's always something to read. So finding how you read best work well for me. Like I don't read well if I have other people around me. Like I can't read in the like shared office space that we have because I get distracted very easily and I just want to keep talking to people. So I read better on my own. And I don't really I know it's work, but I don't consider reading working. So I do that at home a lot. Like if I have to read something like a paper or something, I read it here. But even though it is work, it doesn't feel like work to me. So that's something I feel comfortable doing at home, like even after work or like whenever I am here. So just and also practice. When I was first reading about copepods, I didn't have any sort of background like knowledge about much about crustaceans in general. So I just remember from zoology a little bit. So it was a lot of like looking up a bunch of words that I didn't know yet and like writing that down. And I eventually felt more comfortable. So I think it was all a lot of like just practice and trial and error and like learning as I went along and asking questions to my advisor. I was never scared of like going with a highlighted sentence and saying, I really have no idea what they're saying right here. Like, can you explain? So.
Yeah, I think for me, in terms of the reading, I had to figure out what worked best for me. So I have like this strategy where I read through the introduction, abstract, and then go straight to the discussion to kind of read through, oh, what is this paper talking about? And then I go through the methods figures, but it's very time consuming and especially in the beginning. So don't be afraid when it's taking you like 20 minutes to read through a paper and you have to keep reading through it. It's a learning process because the way people write in your field is going to be very different. You have to get used to it. So don't be afraid that it is time consuming. Just kind of take that into account when you're planning stuff. And then in terms of family, so since I use the bus system, I always call people when I'm walking to the bus or walking home, stuff like that. So that's worked out really well for me, just because it doesn't really, I guess, impede with my schedule during the day, and I still kind of get that time to chat and figure out, oh, how are people doing in my life? So that's kind of how I balance everything. But
For me, family, like I mentioned, family is like super big for me, and I'm thankful that I'm close enough to where I can like go home on the weekends and see them. Although I'm not able to visit them as much because things get super hectic. And sometimes I have to go into the lab on the weekends to like do something with my cells or whatever. So I would say try to like block out periods. If you're able to travel home, like try to block out some time where you go home to see your family, take vacation time. My sister and I, we FaceTime like every night. So if that's something you need to do, feel free. Um, and then yeah, yeah. Wait, what was the other question? What was the other part of that question?
Reading scientific papers.
That's right. That's right. Okay. So I struggled with that really bad. And I took a class this summer, that was literally like a papers class. I did not know this going in, but it was. And we had to read 4 papers a week. And it was hard. It was hard, but it did help me to understand like a lot of the terminology, that's used. So it was a gene editing class. And so it helped me to learn about CRISPR and like what kinds of things goes on in genetics and like what kind of developments we're making right now. And so I would say if you have the opportunity to do something like that and you struggle with reading papers, take a class like that. Maybe not one as like rigorous, but it did help me get more comfortable with reading the papers, talking about them, talking about the methods, the hypothesis. And one thing that I do recommend, that I learned in that class is like if you have a paper that's like super important to your field or like something that your PI wants to go over, they're just something like important to you, try to make a graphical abstract of it. Um, which is like, yeah, like use like little pictures and stuff to like go through the abstract or like the main findings of the research, the hypothesis, because it really does help you understand the paper a lot more. So, and yeah, take the time that you need with them because it's hard to get through papers for sure. So,
Great. And now for our final 2 questions, and the other questions will be answered through text. From Jordan, how do you politely decline a PI you didn't click with during the interview? Also, do you have any tips for rotating with a PI who is new to the institution? And on a similar note, from Eliana, has anyone had to navigate experiencing microaggressions from more senior lab members of the lab?
I can speak on the microaggressions part kind of from a departmental staff perspective. So Purdue is a PWI or predominantly white institution, which means that people of color kind of get these microaggressions sometimes, around just staff, just walking out daily, stuff like that. So with me particularly, as I had the leadership role in the Grad Student Association, I did have to communicate a lot with the staff. And my co-president and I would kind of realize there's some differences. So my co-president, she was white, so the staff kind of went to her to talk about stuff rather than me. So that was a little frustrating sometimes because I'm also in the same leadership role. So I should have the same values, etc. So I think when navigating that, what helped me the most was finding other people who had similar experiences with the same people or people around the staff, like basically other staff people. Um, and just thinking through and walking through logically, okay, do we need to take action? Is this serious enough that we need to take action? Because at the end of the day, we as grad students don't have too much power to do much. So it's kind of looking through, okay, what is high on our priority list? Is this really high? If so, then let's talk to someone who can help us out with that. So my first step was just talking to people around and then also talking to the DEI office about what I was going through and seeing if they had any suggestions on working through it. And majority of them were kind of like, hey, like maybe you could think through how to not let this affect you personally. And that's kind of what helped me the most in navigating it. And now I'm just kind of like, okay, I'm just going to say hi, keep them at a distance. And if I don't need to deal with them, I don't. So just kind of remembering and reminding yourself what is best for your mental health, what is best for your well-being, and going by that. But I do know it can be a little bit more difficult with senior members of the lab, which in that case, I would try to talk to your advisor, and kind of communicate it in a way of here's how I feel, and I feel like this is affecting my work relationship or my work ethic in the lab. Is there anything that you can help me out with? Is kind of my best advice for that.
Yeah, definitely speak to whoever you need to. If it's getting to the point where it's like interfering with, your day-to-day activities, for sure, speak up to the proper resources and everything. I will say I have dealt with that like in classes, and in the lab. It unfortunately, and this is something that I've kind of just told myself, and I hate this answer, but it kind of comes with the territory, unfortunately. And I was just like, it's just something I'm gonna have to push through. Now, if it's something that is just like completely disrespectful, speak up for yourself. And then get your PI, behind you, be like, you cannot talk to my student like this. Because some people just I don't know. Some people just have the audacity, and I don't understand why, but they do. And like, so in my class that I kind of talked about, my papers class, we were talking about some like an acronym of something, and I knew what it was because it had to do with neurons. I'm getting a degree in neuroscience, the only one in that class that's getting a degree in neuroscience. However, I was also the only Black person in that room. And when I said, I was like, oh, this stands for blah, blah, blah. He was like, no, I don't think that's it. And like went to somebody else who is not neuroscience background and was like, oh, she's right. Because she's usually the one who like speaks up and like knows, what she's talking about. And it's stuff like that that happens kind of often. And yeah, it's hard to let that go and like not take it personally. But at the end of the day, remember that you were supposed to be here. You are meant to be here. You may come across things like that. You just have to keep it pushing, honestly. And I know that's not like the best answer, but it's so good to see people like us in those spaces and people say things like that to us to get us, discouraged and knock us down. And so it's a beautiful thing to like keep persevering for sure. And then declining a PI, they get rejections like all the time. So don't take it too seriously. Just say, hey, I found like another lab to rotate in or like something like that. Wish you all the best. Good luck. And like just leave it at that. You don't have to drag it out for sure. But yeah, just do it like that. And then rotating with a new PI, be like open with them about your boundaries, be open about their expectations for you and your expectations for them. Because they don't, you may be their first student like ever. And be clear about like the schedule that you want to have, how often you guys want to meet. But yeah, with new PIs, you really have to be open about expectations. So yeah.
I don't have any like personal experiences, thankfully, so far, like with any sort of microaggressions, but I do think it's important to know where you need to go, like where are the right places to go to get support if you do like have any issues. And I think that's something that at least in my department they emphasize during orientation, like explain to us like who you can go to for certain things and who um actually has like who's when you go to somebody who's gonna actually keep information like a secret? I forgot what the actual word for that is, but like who's gonna keep that
Oh,
information?
ombudsperson?
Yeah. And we had like our office, and then there's the department head and things like that. So they kind of explained to us like who we should go and like what kind of who's above who if things don't aren't progressing the way you need to go eventually until you get to the grad school level and like the actual college levels if things get to that level, but I think it's important to know where to go and like asking around. Also in your department, who's trustworthy enough for you to like go if you have issues with your PI? Because like the first like my first thought would be like, okay, let me go to my PI because my PI is supportive. But what if somebody's PI is not supportive, and what if the problem is that PI? So I think it's also important to know where to go if you do need that advice.
Great. With that, just any final words of advice for our attendees in navigating the first year of grad school?
Take it easier than you probably think you should. I know it's hard, and I personally struggle so much with like finding that balance of when I felt prepared enough to start, and then the day came, and I was like, oh my God, orientation's today. Like everything's happening so fast, and then I was overwhelmed with everything that they said, and then I was like, okay, now I'm prepared. I'm unprepared, and I'm overwhelmed now with everything. So I think being able to like take some time to yourself and like realize, okay, I'm here. This is just step one and just getting through, honestly, get through the first week, realize like that's a goal already. Get through the first day, first month, first semester, and then boom, first year's done. So that's kind of my main advice.
Yeah, I definitely echo that. Take it one thing at a time. Give yourself grace. Give yourself little treats as well. For example, after that first week, after that second week, whatever, just give yourself little treats to help you work through and get through your first year. But you got it. You can do it. So don't worry too much.
Yeah, be kind to yourself. Find things that make you happy outside of the lab, and look forward to those things and just keep moving forward, honestly. Just keep showing up. That is something that was said to me early on when I started my PhD, and I was like, that's like a quote that I need like at my desk. Because if you just keep showing up, you will get things done for sure. And try your best, you've made it this far. So give yourself the credit of trying your best and not trying to do too much.
Great. Well, I want to thank you all again, Ashley, Felix, and Sushma, for taking the time to speak to our not just our alumni and prospective graduate students, but for that valuable words of wisdom. With that, I just sent out a list of the upcoming events that we will be having, and we will also upload this on our YouTube channel. And yeah, but yeah, we'll see each other at the next one. And thank you once again to our panelists. And then we'll just probably take a screenshot for the gram, and then yeah. But yeah, I'll take a screenshot. So, all righty, all right. Thank you, everybody, and we'll see each other in the future. Take care.
Yeah. Bye.